Ready for it.
Thrilled for it.
Presenting France with Turbo Booster Jet Engine.
Nexa.
One final double-header Sunday for IPL 2025 on the day that was originally designated as the final for IPL 2025. Instead, it is a rematch of the IPL 2023 final to kick us off this Sunday. Gujarat Titans versus Chennai Super Kings in Ahmedabad. That's where proceedings begin on Sunday. Welcome. This is Nexa presents ESPN Cricinfo Timeout, where we are joined by Tom Moody, Anil Kumble, Dustin Silgardo, almost the same couch as yesterday. So it's a pleasure for me to be introduced as an Impact sub. Thank you, gentlemen. Look forward to your company. Tom, as contrasting as teams come, Gujarat Titans with the youngest captain in the league, top of the table, aiming to make the top two with a win, and Chennai Super Kings have had their problems.
They certainly have had their problems. And they'd like to certainly sign off the season with an impact and topple one of the most consistent sides, you'd have to say, of the season in GT.
And who's to say it could be one final dance for the man who's won the toss?
Yeah, it could be. I mean, we've been saying this for quite some time. I mean, you know, there was a talk of MS doing that post the final that these two teams were involved in, where CSK won the trophy. Yeah, it could be, potentially. But, you know, like Tom mentioned, I'm sure CSK would be looking forward to signing off on a winning note.
Dustin Silgardo, my first chance to have your company on the couch this season, if memory serves me right, I'm quite sure. But Gujarat Titans are looking to buck a trend. It's like no qualifying team can win a match this week.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is they haven't lost 2 games in a row all season. So they won't want to now do that just before the playoffs. They've managed to, every time they've lost, come back and win the next game. And yeah, this is a big opportunity. If they win, it's simple now. They're through to the qualifier 1 if they win this game. So they'll be looking to do that.
Yeah, and they will have to chase here. Chennai Super Kings have won the toss. MS Dhoni opting to bat first. The one chasing win this season in Ahmedabad has come in the day game, where GT chased 200 plus against Delhi Capitals. That was on the back of Joss Butler, and they will also go into this game knowing that this is the last time they have Butler to call upon.
Yeah, and they need to take full advantage of it too. Or certainly Butler needs to leave a lasting impression, because it's such an important game for GT, because if they get the all-important 2 points, it just puts them exactly where they need to be in that top 4.
Yeah, it's the first time a team has chosen to bat first at Ahmedabad. Teams have consistently chosen to field first there, even though teams batting first have actually been winning. Of course, this is a day game, so that changes things. There's no due factor.
They're coming off what was a big loss to Lucknow Super Giants. What are the lessons they would have taken from that outing?
I guess, you know, you can't just be complacent. I mean, they have a really good bowling attack. It's important for Rashid Khan to start firing, because this is the business end for GT. You would want the quality and the genius of Rashid to come through. That is number one. But I'm sure, you know, they're aware. They're aware that this is a very important game, because you never know. If they lose this game, they could be playing the eliminators. And that's something that you don't want to do. If you have to win the title, then you have to win 3 back-to-back games in what, about 5 days or 4 days, which is really, really challenging.
Which has only been managed once in the history of the IPL, and the man responsible, we have the pleasure of his company.
Yeah, I wasn't responsible, but the players were very responsible.
It is your win, Tom.
Yeah, I just made sure they turned up on time.
It was a big enough job.
Yeah.
But can't help but look at the story of the two captains. This is also the first time Shubman Gill walks out knowing that he is now India's test captain, the man to take India into their test match future, the youngest captain in this IPL up against the oldest captain in this IPL. Shubman Gill, such a big occasion for him. The last 24 hours must be overwhelming for a 25-year-old to know what he's going to be doing now.
Yeah, it is. It's a privilege and a proud feeling to captain India. And for someone this young to get that opportunity at this time in his career, I think it's a great moment for him. And I'm sure he'll be looking forward to it. It's going to be challenging. Being captain of India does have its share of pressure, not just performance on the field, but from outside, everything else, dealing with the media, dealing with other pressures of managing team when you travel especially. And so the first tour for him would be England. So, you know, it's going to be interesting how he goes about. He would obviously want to leave a very lasting impact as captain of India. He'd like to first look at how he can contribute with the bat immensely and sort of seal that. I know he's probably wanting to bat at number 4, and that's something that I'm sure he will continue to do that. But I think what's important for him is to just think of the present, which I'm sure he would be, which is a very key moment for GT now. They win today, they are in the qualifiers, and that I'm sure will be in his mind. And he'll be delighted that he's captain of India.
How do you chart his evolution as a leader? Took up GT captaincy last year, and that was a difficult campaign. They finished 7th. What's changed? How have you seen him grow in this role?
Well, he hasn't had an easy road to it, has he, when you think about it? Because, firstly, he's young, trying to establish himself as a player in the IPL, but also establish himself in the Indian cricket side. And you can take it right back to him being let go by KKR. That's a bit of a kick in the backside, given that you would think that, don't you value me as an important piece of your future? So he's responded well to that, gone to a new franchise. Then he had to follow Hardik Pandya, who was a very successful captain, brought them a trophy. So that's, again, not the easiest thing to do. So I think this transition into the Indian captaincy for the test matches, I think he'll do absolutely, like he's done all throughout over the last couple of years, seamlessly. To me, I look at him, you look at his demeanour and his body language, he just seems very much in control and very calm. But that will be tested, as Anil sort of, suggested, particularly with that Indian role. It's a very, very tough one.
Yeah, he's also, what I like about Gill is he's somebody who's quite malleable, willing to move with the game. I remember he did an interview a few years ago where he said that, people look too much at strike rates in T20s. He was very much thinking that, no, I've got to get a lot of runs in a season. And then you listen to how he talks about batting now, and he's talking about maximizing the power play. He says that, no, we need to be aware of where the game is going. And so we need to, focus on strike rate, focus on starting quickly. And that shows he's willing to read the game, look at how trends are changing, and adapt to that, which is key, clearly in the IPL, but also moving ahead in test cricket.
And it's also so appreciable because I remember among the data pieces we've done in the last few years, one of the bits that had come out was this pattern of young Indian batters, when they become captains for the first time in the IPL, tend to go into a bit of a shell at times. We saw dips in their strike rates. I'm talking KL Rahul, Sanju Samson. It even hampered Rishabh Pant. But Gill, since last year when he's been captain, has been striking above 150, well ahead his career strike rate.
Yeah, that's been the plus point, for Shubman Gill, because it hasn't really affected his batting. Like you said, there are times where people take this responsibility of captaincy and then suddenly it starts affecting their game. And fortunately for Shubman Gill, it hasn't really happened. And that's something that I'm sure Indian cricket will be hoping, that it won't affect his batting performances when he tours England.
All right, let's turn our attention to conditions. Dustin, what can you tell us about what we've seen in Ahmedabad this season?
Yeah, there have been 1 or 2 low-scoring games, but there have been a lot of high-scoring games there. Teams batting first have won a lot of the games. You can see, it's one of the highest-scoring venues of the season. And I think a lot of those games which have been won by the team batting first have been by GT, who've just, set a good score of 200 plus and then have the bowling to defend it. Today, of course, CSK will be looking to do something similar. I think this is just a second day game there. And so, we'll see how the spinners go. It's been, more or less the same for pace and spin, although GT have at times used the spinners reluctantly in some cases. They've been using Sai Kishore only against certain matchups. That'll be interesting to see today how they use him and then how they use Rashid, who had a very tough outing last time around. Not his first tough outing of the season, in fact. And for GT, I think getting wickets in the power play will be huge, isn't it, Tom? I think the 3 games they've lost this season have been 3 games where, or 3 of the games they've lost have been games where they haven't taken a wicket in the power play. And then that really affects their bowling plans when they can't get that early strike. Yeah,
and I think that's just been reflected in Mohammad Siraj in particular. Sort of his potency early on was, off the charts in the first half of the tournament, and it's just slid away slightly. Rabada, it's going to be interesting to see how they use Rabada. Obviously, if he's in the...
Is he?
Let me confirm that for you.
Are they using him or not using him?
Not featuring. Gerald Coetzee is in.
Okay.
Let me take you through how GT are lining up. And that is the one change. Kagiso Rabada,
Yep.
who is, of course, this would be the last game that he was available for as he goes for World Test Championship preparations, is replaced by Gerald Coetzee, who will continue to be with the squad, which is
Yeah.
something you expected to see in the last game itself, knowing
Yeah.
that Coetzee has a role to play in the future.
Yeah, well, we weren't 100% sure whether he had a little niggle, a groin niggle. We weren't 100% sure whether he was absolutely on top of that. So they probably bought a couple more days just to make sure that was right, because they're relying on Coetzee now till the end. But to be fair, if you look at Rabada's performances, you could probably argue that Coetzee would come in for Rabada regardless of the external circumstances. He's a good impact bowler. He can generate some high pace. What I was going to say is, if Rabada was playing, I just wonder whether I'd give him the new ball right at the get-go to get him into the game. And they might do that with Coetzee. We might see them trying to, recover their sort of wicket-taking capabilities in the power play by just making some subtle changes with their bowling unit.
Yeah, I feel like Coetzee with a short ball to Matre that could be something they try, right? Because he has quite a nasty short one.
I mean, they'd probably go with first Arshad and Siraj. That's been their sort of go-to bowling, and I'm happy that Arshad is fine after that couple of slip-ups with his bowling run-up. So yeah, I guess that's the probably lineup that they will go with.
Yeah, this is something we can come back to in a bit when we build ahead to the power play. But let's take a look at Chennai Super Kings. How are they lining up? Could it be farewells for a few players? Well, one of the players we've thought could be among the high-profile releases are Ashwin. He does not feature. This is Chennai's batting first team. Ashwin on the bench, but Deepak Hooda replaces him. And you also have Pathirana on the bench, so you'd imagine he's the bowler who comes in. Tom, thoughts?
Yeah, I just wonder whether that's Ashwin's last outing in yellow, because they've got a difficult decision, or they've got a few difficult decisions, CSK, at the end of the season with regards to their retentions. And Ashwin would be definitely in that conversation, you would think, particularly given they paid just short of 10 crore. Yep. And they do need to free up funds to be able to just make the slight adjustments to their squad that's required, because I think that they would even admit that they didn't quite get the auction exactly how they liked it. But interesting one for Deepak Hooda as well, because he's also under the spotlight, I would have thought, with regards to his future. So a one-off chance, is that fair? I think it's better than no chance at all, isn't it?
Yeah,
he's had a fair few chances. I mean, with CSK hasn't really performed.
Yeah,
I'm a bit surprised that they haven't really even thought of Rahul Tripathi. They've just sort of sort of submitted him to saying, okay, you're not a part of the squad. So, which is a bit strange.
Did Tripathi's chances of maybe getting a game or two at the end get affected eventually by those replacements coming in and the way you saw Matre and even Urval Patel later on take to the stage?
He could be a victim of the circumstances of the team's performance. Not so much the inclusion of players, but suddenly, since they were out of the tournament so early, they're thinking around what their future looks like would have affected Tripathi and Deepak Hooda, I would have thought.
I'm most interested to see who CSK bat at number 4. I mean, they've tried everybody there. Might be Noor Ahmed today for all we know.
MS Dhoni.
Yeah, that's another one. That's one they haven't tried.
Yeah, would be a good way to finish.
Yeah.
Indeed. But what CSK have done, and I guess this is a larger conversation we can get into now, is through their mid-season replacements, find the bright sparks that might serve them as they look to change the template going into 2026. I mean, you could argue they've already done that in the changed approach we've seen. Dustin, Ayush Matre, Devil Brevis, Urval Patel, all staking claims to be part of the...
Yeah, they'll have to build around those players for next season. Conway will be an interesting one. They've given him this run now towards the end of the season, which makes it look like they're going to, invest. They're going to invest in him for over the next 2 seasons as well. But yeah, I think him and Matre at the top. But then you have to also figure out where Gaikwad comes in. So that'll be the challenge of figuring out how do you get these young players in with Gaikwad also back next season.
I mean, that's something that I think CSK sort of didn't start well with. I thought Ruturaj should have opened the batting right from the start of CSK's campaign, and he didn't do that. He sort of came down to number 3, and of course he got injured, and then he was not available for the rest of the season. But I think next season, if it's going to be Matre, even if Conway gets 100 today, I think it has to be Ruturaj opening the batting.
I want to focus on these players one by one, and there are a couple of bowlers too who we'll come to later. But Devil Brevis, you've already identified him as what could be one of CSK's greatest ever long-term signings. Is he already the centerpiece of the possible CSK middle order next year?
Absolutely, because what he has shown over the last 12 months is a real acceleration of consistency in a different role to what we originally saw him. When he first came, there was a lot of noise around baby AB, which you have to feel sorry for him in that situation, because there's nothing worse than being labelled underneath a former great. The expectations go through the roof. But he was at the top of the order there at Mumbai Indians. So Mumbai Indians did the right thing and identify a really exciting young talent, which Mumbai have done historically pretty well. But it was too early for him to really have the consistent impact you'd hope for an overseas player. Since probably the last 12 months or so, he's moved down the order into more of an impact middle order player, a bit like a Tristan Stubbs and, Rodman Powell, those type of players, Hetmeyer. And he has done it exceptionally well in the SA20 and the brief visits he's had with CSK. So it's an important piece to see CSK's puzzle, because they have been so dependent just on Dubé playing that impact role. So if you've got a right-hander and a left-hander, which they potentially have now moving forward at 5 and 6, you can really build something considerable around that formula. Because one thing we were critical was in the early parts of CSK is their lack of ability to target boundaries. And you've got two good boundary hitters there. And
even more of a reason, Anil, why they should look at maybe Brevis and Dubé at number 4 and 5, right? I mean, this idea of Jadeja at number 4, I mean, it just delays the entry of Brevis and Dubé. If Jadeja is playing, surely he has to play the number 7 or 8 role, or is he part of the plans for next season at all?
I'm not really sure about that, whether he's part of the plans for next season. I mean, even if he is, then probably they will possibly release him and then buy him back, because that's been sort of CSK's over the last 18 years. That's how they've built their squads. Same kind of people coming back into the squad. I agree. I mean, Brevis is someone who can play spin really well, and you don't have to worry about an overseas batter so young, concern of spin in those middle overs. And with Dubé there, you have the right combination of two young batters who can really hit boundaries, and that's something that CSK was certainly lacking.
Yeah, as you can see on the screen, just the one dismissal to spin so far for Devil Brevis, which perhaps only furthers the point you're trying to make. As we look at some of the other players, Noor Ahmed is one. He's not only the leading wicket taker of CSK, among the leading wicket takers in the competition. He's back home, spent a few successful seasons for GT at Ahmedabad. Would you call him CSK's standout player this season?
Well, they paid for him, didn't they? I identified him in the auction, and they paid a good price for him, and you can see why now. He's a genuine wicket taker, and we've seen historically how important to have a spin wicket taking option in those middle overs, and he has filled that void perfectly, and that's why we question the likes of Ashwin and Jadeja's futures at CSK, because are we seeing a slight change of a strategy and game approach from CSK moving forward?
Yeah, it was really one of the statement moments of the auction, wasn't it? Stephen Fleming going all out for that bump up from 5 crore to 10 crore for Noor Ahmed. We can see that he's been equally impressive against right-handers and left-hand batters. What explains that to you? What does he get right?
Yeah, because of his ability to get the ball leaving the batter, both sides. And, for a left-hander or a right-hander, when you have that option, it's always tough for any batter, because you can't first have to pick from the hand, and he's pretty quick in the air. The trajectory is quick. What has been impressive has been his control, and of course his wicket-taking ability because of his wrist spin. I think CSK probably, when you have an overseas spinner as one of your frontline 4 options, one of the 4 options, then it becomes that much more difficult for you to balance the side, especially when you have an Ashwin and a Jadeja. I know they felt the pressure of playing 3 spinners. Chennai probably didn't have that kind of surface this season where you could afford to play all the 3. So I think going forward they'll have to take a call, because you can't then have 2 Indian spinners. And I was a bit surprised when they actually went so hard for Noor Ahmed. when they were looking at Ashwin and Jadeja to be a part of the scheme anyway.
Yeah, well, that's 30. It's 30 crore. No, it's not. It's 38 crore.
Yep.
Just in spin.
Yeah.
Yep. And they have also been able to balance that spin conundrum out with the impressive performances of Anil Kumble, who was one to look out for the future as well. But let's turn our attention towards Gujarat Titans. The last game, as much as they lost, came with the important factor of the middle order finally getting some game time. And Shahrukh Khan, important piece in the puzzle, Dustin.
Yeah, I mean, with Shahrukh, I was looking at some of his highlights this season. He hasn't had that many balls to face, but his strike rate is very high this season. I think it's about 180 plus. And the other thing that stands out is the first 10 ball strike rate, 178. So he can get going as soon as he comes in. 9 innings, 5 not out. So even if he's played maybe 5-6 balls at the end of the innings, he's getting you some runs off those balls. The other thing that I really liked about Shahrukh, again, just watching his highlights, was he uses the entire ground. If you look at his boundaries against pace, you'll see that he's got boundaries all around the ground. Again, that mid-off and covers region, Tom and I were talking about Tim David with this. He's got that same ability. If you go outside the arc, he can go 6 over cover, 6 over mid-off. He's also got the ramp shot. When they go cutters into the pitch, he's hit some ramps over third. He's able to play that kind of lap pull shot if they go at the rib. So he's just got shots all around the wicket, couple of lovely boundaries through point as well. When they go really wide with the Yorker, he just kind of opens the face and hits boundaries there. So he's been, I mean, again, not a huge number of balls to face, but looking good as somebody who could come good in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's interesting looking at that wagon wheel, because that to me also highlights teams playing against him are still unsure exactly how to shut him down. There's no clear plan A, because there has been historically sort of the rumours that you go short and you target, body line. Therefore, you can see those square of the wicket boundaries. So some teams are still doing that. Some are then going wide. So credit to him that he's worked on that part of his game, and he's expanded his ability to score both sides of the wicket.
Could you chart his evolution? Because this has been a player in the spotlight. He's had those bumper bids in some auctions, uncapped player. How do you view him from the Shahrukh Khan you had in your Punjab setup to what you see now?
I think the first time that I saw him, obviously, he had power. I mean, he was a big guy, and you knew that he's someone which is slight unusual for an Indian to have that kind of power hitting. And he was hitting fast bowlers into the stands. And I think what has changed over the years has been he's worked on his fitness. He's much leaner now. And he's also worked on his game against spin, because he was someone who found it difficult when the ball was leaving him. A left-arm spinner or a leg spinner, he would look to go over mid-on, and then it would always be the leading edge and then get out. And the other aspect was, the first couple of years when he was with Punjab, we certainly wanted to go hard from ball one, and then, invariably, he was comfortable to have his entry point in the 16th, 17th over or around that point, because that was the role that he was playing for Tamil Nadu. Unfortunately, because of the way that we played, his entry point came around the 10th, 11th over or 12th over, and that's something that he couldn't really manage. But I think he's worked on that, and it's nice to see him in that middle order where he's contributing for GT.
Who were the top order batters in that lineup? Shahrukh Khan, all jokes aside, Shahrukh Khan is that batter you can probably identify who has the biggest role to play once Butler now leaves for the playoffs.
Yeah, well, definitely. I think Tuatia also will be another one that will just, like he does, just stick his head up at a key moment and do something special, and think, oh, wow, where's that come from? I didn't realise that he was playing, because he's done that over the last couple of years, and he's got that experience. But I think still GT will be relying on their main engine, and that's the top, 1, 2 and 3. So the person that's got the biggest shoes to fill will be Mendes.
All right. They do obviously have that prolific opening partnership on the cusp of breaking all sorts of IPL partnership records in a season. But CSK batting first. What can we expect in the first 6? It's time for Nexa Presents Powerplay Conversations. CSK's power play story in this season has been transformed radically ever since Ayush Matre arrived on the stage. Dustin, what's changed?
I mean, they're just trying to hit over the top, going for boundaries. I think they had the slowest power play strike rate by quite a distance in the first few games, and then in the last 6 matches it's picked up. I think it's still, despite that uptick, it's the slowest among all teams, but they've got that right at least. And yeah, I mean he's somebody who he looks a player, doesn't he, Matre? The way he can go even over the offside, and so he's somebody to watch today.
He's also recently been named the captain for the
Captain of India.
Under-19 tour to England, so clearly a player who's being identified and earmarked.
Yes, I mean, he's done well in domestic cricket, even in first-class cricket. So it really augurs well for him. And, to get that opportunity as a replacement and doing really well. And now we're talking, saying, look, he's the future for CSK. Must be really a compliment for the way that he's come through in the brief period that all of us have sort of seen him play at this level.
That India Under-19 team could have an opening partnership of Ayush Matre and Vaibhav Suryavanshi.
I thought, yeah, it's endless, isn't it? Yeah, who would be a selector here in India with all the batting talent there is? More so, it's more batting, isn't it? Seems to be just oodles of batters. No disregard to the pace bowlers or spin, but there's plenty of depth with bat.
All right, GT will have their power play questions. Mohammad Siraj, none for 17 in the power play in the last game, but those wickets have dried up in the second half of the season. That's something, just 2 in the last 6 or 7 games. That's something GT want improving going into the playoffs.
Yeah, he needs to, because playoffs is critical. Early wickets in that power play will always help, and that's the way that you sort of start putting pressure on the opposition batsman. I mean, today is an ideal day for GT to get that going, because CSK haven't really been great in the power play.
Yeah, really interested to see his speeds as well. In the beginning part of the season, there was times he was going even above 150. There were a few balls he clocked consistently in the high 140s. Towards the fag end of the season with fast bowlers, sometimes that does go down. So interesting to see if he can have that burst, get the pace up, because I think with Siraj, he was beating batters, of course, with the swing, but at times even for pure pace in the early part of the season.
Yeah, those were also the couple of games he played against his former franchises. RCB
he ramped
was
it up
one
in particular for that game,
version of Siraj. So who knows, GT are hoping that they get RCB sometime in the playoffs. But for the time being, it's time to tuck into predictions. CSK are underway. I will wait for forecaster to load up. Dustin, since you are usually closest to forecaster, what are you predicting?
I mean, it's a hot day. I'll say 176.
Anil, hot day, bowlers should be struggling?
No, I think Devon Conway will get runs today, so I'm looking at a 200.
Okay, Tom, I'll give you the intellect of forecaster, 199.
I was going to say 189.
Oh, okay. All right. We will see where that stands. Thank you so much, Tom, Anil, Dustin, for kicking us off this doubleheader Sunday, the last doubleheader Sunday for IPL 2025. We'll pick up the conversation once Chennai Super Kings' last batting innings of the season is done. So be sure to join us then on Nexa Presents ESPN Cricket Info Timeout.
Ready for it.
Thrill for it.
Presenting France with Turbo Booster Jet Engine.
Nexa.